Well met, lords and ladies, Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. And once again, it is truly a warm welcome this time because, yeah, I brought out the Zane hoodie for the first time in ages, and I have it tied to my waist because even though I'm filming this much later than usual, it's about, I don't know, 5, 6 o'clock, I can't even remember anymore, but it's still fairly warm. And it was quite hot all day, and for some of this week as well. I'm surprised. You don't expect there to be hotter during September than, you know, most of the summer. I'm not sure what that's about. I also just got something in my shoe, so pardon me a second. Normally I ignore the stuff that I get in my shoe, but look, it's really early. I just started filming, and yeah, best to get rid of that as soon as possible. It also gives me a good chance to show off my tricky feet. There you go. I don't know if I framed that properly because I don't exactly have a rear view camera on this thing. Which, by the way, would be a very useful feature to have, Samsung. Give us some rear views or something like that. Or possibly the ability to film in both directions and then just like display one, switch to the other and not have it so that it stops the recording. Because that would really help too. But I don't know. I don't normally have too much to say about technology and such. Actually, well, with the exception of the Gacha lineup. Although I must say that within the past week or so, the internet around the house has been really bad recently. Like, there'll be certain times when it will just disconnect me entirely, and then when I try to actually input the security key, it just stopped. It just didn't work. It said can't connect, with no other explanation beyond that. I ran a troubleshooter. I restarted and, you know, changed my network configuration, which is why I had to put the security key in the first place. But yeah, no, that was yesterday that happened. I forgot to mention it today. But yeah, considering that this is the last Walking Wednesday I'm doing before I head up to Liverpool, I think it's not going to be too bad. Granted, the Wi-Fi there is usually worse than back here. Like, it will sometimes cut out at random intervals, which is why I'm kind of concerned going back into streaming up there. But honestly, not as concerned as I would be otherwise, because Restream is not only is it way better for, you know, destinations, setup, good display, all of that fun stuff, but it also just provides if it disconnects, if the stream disconnects, it will open up the exact same link again and keep going. And that may sound incredibly obvious, like, yes, of course that's what you do, but no. Like, if I want to change a setting for any stream that I've done in the past, other than ones on Restream, I have to hope that it's an option that I can change whilst I'm live, or restart the whole thing again with an entirely new link. Streamlabs is the same. Like, yes, you have one stream key, but every time it opens up a new display, which, considering that usually when I do these things, I like to try and prepare in advance and, like, you know, mark it across the different group chats, make sure that people are notified that this is actually happening, because it's not entirely regular. It doesn't really help things, because suddenly it's like, oh yeah, well now everyone's going to drift away. And when that's happened in the past, I've had it so that people don't come back. So yeah, it's just one of those, like, again, it seems so trivial, but it really isn't. Well, it shouldn't be. So yeah, I feel like if I have connection issues while I'm up there, it should be alright. Like, I can cover anything else, you know, cut out any stuff with reviews or whatever. Hopefully, if I'm doing any calls or Minecraft stuff, people will just realize, oh yeah, it's an issue. Because some people won't even realize that I've moved, honestly. Like, the only evident move I'm gonna have is probably gonna be, well, the hours that I'm prepared to call people without muting my own microphone so I don't disturb anyone who's sleeping will be different, because the walls are practically soundproof in that place. But also on the Butter Bunch, because on the Butter Bunch, most of the videos that I show up in, you know, in my room and everything, and you know, with all the lights and etc. So yeah, it's gonna be the first time that I'm actually filming the Butter Bunch in that studio apartment. Yeah, thanks to COVID, it's never actually, even though that channel's over a year old now, it's never seen that time. Speaking of that, I'm very surprised, because sometimes when I leave the main channel, I've said that before, sometimes I leave the main channel for a while, don't really upload or post anything, or at least, you know, didn't back in the day when I didn't have Walking Wednesday and streams to keep up engagement, then people would sometimes just subscribe out of nowhere. It's like, where do these people come from? But yeah, nowadays it's just the opposite. I do streams, and suddenly I've lost subscribers while I'm going, even though that's like one of the main things I do now. So sure, that's what people have subscribed for. And if they hadn't, they should have already unsubscribed to begin with. Usually, unless they're really patient and waiting for my next gacha video, which I don't blame you for, because those take way longer than they should. But I'll get to that in a second. It's just that for the most part, yeah, now that phenomenon is happening on the Butter Bunch. Like, whenever there's like a hiatus, actually no, whenever I post another What If video on there, or anyone posts any videos, there's usually one or two new people pretty much immediately. And then it will like filter down for a bit. But then, or then like, you know, all of the videos in the same series will suddenly go up in viewership because people are checking them out again, etc., etc. Which means that we're still being promoted, which is great. Thank you, YouTube. That's what we want. But also, it's there. Well, I've missed out what I was going to say now. Oh yeah, but also sometimes, again, when there's nothing going on, like I haven't had a video in 2 weeks actually, and the one that we did have was a stream. In fact, there was another stream that I then unlisted afterwards. But yeah, suddenly it was like, oh, instead of losing subscribers, this channel is gaining them. And yeah, like I can tell from the profiles that it's still mostly Dragon Ball people. So yeah, I'm not resting on my laurels, absolutely not. In fact, I spent a good chunk of yesterday worrying about What If Goku Married Suno Part 3, which I should have really checked with Emma before in terms of recording lines for Suno and, well, basically all of the female characters. But yeah, she was on holiday, so couldn't really do that. I was like, well, we've got 2 requests now on Twitter from the same person to complete Part 3. So it's like, yeah, this has to happen. And also, I did finish writing the original, like the new original, like the what if Chi-Chi trained like Goku. So there is a lot that's happening. I'm just deciding which way to go. I'm down at the wreck again. On a nice sunset. Again, later than usual. Actually, this sunset's rather early. Maybe it's not sunset. It's sunset. Okay. Oh well. So, yeah, still very much trying to do that. But yeah, of course, most of my efforts, once again, unsurprisingly this week, have been focused on the Mutant Girl. So, what happened a few days ago was Aiden messaged, well, called me and Monet and maybe a few others, but mostly the key people that he's involved with work-wise, to tell us that he'd broken his wrist and that he was probably not going to be able to do any edits or stuff like that for some time. But only to immediately then start regretting that decision and going, oh hey, well I can do this part. Like, I don't want to just be separate. I want to be involved. I want to make sure that I keep myself active, which, to be honest, I get that itch 100%. Because while I'll complain all I want about, you know, how tedious the editing process is and everything, like the satisfaction you get once you've posted something and it's out there, and that you've actually been able to engage with people about it, like that's something quite special. So it's only achieved through that step that makes it satisfying in the first place. It's like I always say when I'm writing stories, I can't leave the characters happy and relaxed all the time. They've got to go through some hardship and some drama, because otherwise it's not interesting, and those happy moments aren't worth it. But yeah, it's very much true of real life too. Yeah, if I had to, philosophize all about the meaning of suffering and everything, I'd say that comes pretty close, to be fair. We suffer so that we can understand happiness, so that we have a concept of what else is out there, what makes us happy, what makes other people happy. And because we're all different, we all make each other suffer sometimes without wanting to. And we're able to create a happiness from overcoming what put us in despair. I don't know. I don't want to go that deep this particular Walking Wednesday, but that's something that maybe I'll brush up on later if anyone's interested. To be fair, that probably couldn't become a Fallen Angels plotline. That's where most of my philosophy chatter goes these days. That's not even an exaggeration. Walking Wednesday is just full of that stuff. And mostly it's from the character of Diogenes, who I suggested to Aiden as like the mentor figure, and wanted to model after, not necessarily like the full idea of cynicism, the philosophy that Diogenes was the main father of, but just the idea that he's evolved over time and he's had plenty more time to think, into his own higher plane of existence, which is effectively where he is. It's where they all are. They're on the higher plane, aren't they? Anywho, I keep passing this footpath all the time. It just goes down to exactly where I was before. Is that downhill? Yeah, it's quite downhill. I'm going to stay on the hill for right now. But yeah, back to the Mutant Girl, because, it's not like I shy away from complex discussions there, it's just that obviously I reserve them a lot more for the series that is much more existential these days. I feel like that's again one of the things about my particular style of writing in terms of the characters, because on one part I want to make them feel like they're actual teenagers, but at the same time I don't want them to talk like actual teenagers, because honestly, as when I was a teenager myself, like I didn't talk like a normal teenager. So it's not something that I can relate to, but it's also something that I acknowledge is different. That isn't necessarily a common path all the time. But yeah, I don't know. I also want the meeting God to be a thing that people can come back to. You know, I mean, yeah, obviously people are discovering it years after it first started. That's just the nature of it progressively updating. But in general, like, the thing about internet shows is that there's so many of them all the time that usually the ones that you come back to, the ones that you have personal memory of, unless there's something that makes them stand out and stand the test of time, which doesn't always happen. I mean, I discovered Dragon Ball Z Abridged when in 2017, so that was 9 years down its production line, and it was just because of the "why didn't you dodge" meme that I searched up, and I found that it was from this series. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I never heard of a bridge series really at that point, so I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. But yeah, people remember these things, so they stand the test of time, whether it's humor, whether it's themes, whether it's the neutral joke, for crying out loud. Something that people can latch onto. So that's what I always aim to do. I always aim to have something. Maybe that's why I always try and stand out from the crowd so much. Like, every gacha show that I do has always got to be something somewhat original to it. Except for, I mean, arguably Alpha Witch Academy only has semi-unique editing style because of the magic and visuals, at least right now. I don't know if it's separated too much of other things from other things, but I'm not worrying about that much anymore. But yeah, the music girl definitely is like, oh, everything has to stand out. Yes, maybe I'll use a trope here or there, but usually I'll try and add some sort of own unique twist to it, which sounds pretty obvious, but in gacha it wasn't. So I don't know. That's why I'm always like, okay, how is this going to be different? I don't want this to be like everything else. What can make it stand out? That's maybe why I always do that. Because, like, if it's the same, then no one's going to remember it. Like, I don't know. To other things, I want to, you know, leave a mark on this world, basically. I want to have something that people can look back to, you know, years after I have left this mortal coil and all that. And whether that's like a book I publish, or a song I write, or a video that I publish, or, well, hopefully several. But yeah, just something to establish that I was on this planet at some stage. But yeah, that's been what I've wanted to do for, since I was like 12 or 13. I suddenly realized, oh yeah, you know, I better start on this stuff now so that I can get good at it and I have more chances to succeed. Which leads me to what I've discovered this week, actually, is that, you know, I'm still being held back by a lot of the new ideas that get suggested. Remember before when I was talking about how BB would always pitch a lot of ideas, like almost every single day, and like they wouldn't necessarily fully fit the ideas that we're going for, like the main through line. I don't know. And he wanted to see if like that would be something that I'd be prepared to back up, or whether he'd want to produce it independently at some stage. And then most of those ideas never actually got made. In fact, none of them have, because I told him that I needed to see at least one installment of something published before he pitches anything to me again. And that was a year ago. So you can imagine he's either working really hard at it in the background, or just completely forgotten and is constantly being bogged down by new ideas without being able to focus on one specific one. which I get. Because, again, I used to be very much like that. Again, back when I was writing a lot of books at the same time, I would have the impulse to just sorry, my throat's very dry. I just drank a bunch of water. How my throat so dry? Anyway, yeah. So what I do is, like, if I got bored of one idea, I'll come back to it later. But I eventually did finish some ideas in the past, but yeah, a few things got abandoned. And with Gacha, it's kind of the same, but considering that there's a lot of other people involved, actively waiting for this kind of stuff, your typical puppy love, siren story, virus alert, that kind of stuff. And it's just that either, I try and keep the main thing that I actually have going on continuing, even though I've established that there's no end in sight, and suddenly there's the problem. That it's just like the Mutant Girl is kind of somewhat holding back everything else. I mean, even Alpha Witch Academy sometimes. Like, now that I'm just waiting for other people's edits, I could have gone back to Alpha Witch Academy, but I've now been conscripted onto Aiden's team, which means that I am now going to be editing more Fallen Angels, which I've already done. So that's even more of a delay. But Aiden's got the right idea of asking for this kind of things early, because this summer has been absolutely horrible in terms of production, because everyone was either having issues or whatever. Which is why I've made a decision about something to do with the Mutant Girl, but either I mentioned it last episode or I'll omit it for now. But I've made a decision about something, and I'm going to sort that out. Really, again, once things have cleared up a little, like maybe after I've sorted out, the last chance that I can get to meet up with friends before I go back up to Liverpool. Maybe the What If Goku Married Sooner video, which I promised a long time ago. Possibly do a head start on the Fallen Angels edit. Like, there's a lot of things. And I still have to get ready to go to uni. But eventually I'll make an announcement that I've decided something to do with the Mutant Girl that is going to really help going forward. And it's something I should have done a long time ago, obviously, but something that I wouldn't have thought to do all the way back in season 1, because that just wasn't a thing that happened yet. There was no standard, but it's basically I'm going to employ a standard technique that Gacha voice actors Gacha voice directors have been doing since the Mutant Girl started, and just employing it for now. I feel like that's the best option. Maybe I'll even revamp the Buttercalls server or something, because I can see how a lot of these things, like maybe the Mutant Girl needs like a dedicated server as well. That's not the announcement, by the way. I'm just spitballing. Maybe it's like other shows where it's not too reliant on Discord, but it really helps things get started and have a lot in terms of discussion. I've seen a lot of servers where people just aren't as invested or anything, but I also have 2 years head start on people who do their first voice acting project, in which I've met the people that I know I can rely on, the ones that I can't. I've met the ones that I know aren't going to make fan art videos when they promise to do an edit out of nowhere and then forget they have to go to bed, and also the ones that aren't going to choose the longest scene and then not tell me they're going to leave for 4 days while I'm desperate to publish this video that I should have published literal months ago. And I've also met the ones that are actually, diligent, and even with a broken wrist still want to help out all the time because they know how important this stuff is to me. So I think if I did that, it might be a little bit better. That will probably go hand in hand with the thing I was talking about before, the announcement. So If I do make that, that'll be a secondary thing. So yeah. As far as we're going, I'm done with editing for the next episode of Mutant Girl for now. I might ask for some other voice lines to be submitted soon, but I also feel like maybe this is something that I should wait until after the announcement to do. And people are going to ask, oh, what's the announcement if that's the case? Because I know that Aiden's definitely going to push me to go, oh yeah, make sure you send these out immediately so people know that this is happening. It's like, yeah, fair enough. But I've got plans, basically. I've got plans now, and hopefully it's a cunning one. That's all I will say on that matter. But yeah. Maybe it would also be good to get away from the shadow of the previous Buttercore server. Because on one hand, like if I'd known about to make a Discord server all that time ago, I would have just made a Mutant Girl one. Because again, there was no company until well, Roy decided that it was going to be the case. But yeah, that's like, oh yeah, I'll run with that concept because that's what Aphmau does. That's kind of my default. If Aphmau does it, then so shall I. That kind of thing. But just my own way, obviously. Obviously now that's become less of the case. Although I did watch a video 3 days ago that Aphmau published on that day that I think I'm going to talk about also in another video. But yeah, I didn't really have time. I don't have time to do my own independent stuff anymore, for the most part. Because, good God, I'm just doing so many collaborative things all the time. Beanie Boy's right in that regard. He's the king of solo success, as far as I'm concerned. And while I don't want to do that necessarily, I do acknowledge its benefits from time to time. There's also something else I was going to mention. The cars always distract me with this kind of thing. Oh yeah, it's also a good lesson to not really cling on to the past too much. Like, particularly because that's why I don't usually recast voice actors myself, and I'll just wait for them for ages. So partly I acknowledge it's my fault for really just, letting everyone do their thing, and suddenly it's like, oh yeah, no, I'll send these in, like 2 months after I requested them. Because I'm like, oh, well, they're who the character, they're the identity of that character. They're what people recognize. Like, longest time, Julius was a great example for that. Other than the ones that I filled in for, this will be the first Mutant Girl episode that is not voiced by the Julius is not voiced by Adney. Because I'm done. Like, he disappeared for ages, didn't tell me, because he couldn't, but then afterwards he refused to come back, and I've been ever so patient trying to still keep him involved. Because he doesn't like him not want to be involved. He likes voicing Julius. People like him as Julius, but it's one of those things. It's like, I don't know. I feel like, again, if I announce the new system I'm going to do, there'll be less of that time. And it's not even just him. It's mainly a lot of people that I've hired on, or like I've met with the specific purpose of voicing in the show. Like for example, Caroline, who I was introduced to back in 2019 because that was the early preparation of season 2, and I needed a voice for Agatha. And she seems very attached to Agatha in a strange way. Like, she had to go, and the role passed on to Apex. Apex was originally supposed to be just Kid Agatha, but then Caroline was like, oh, well, just have her voice the normal Agatha, because I can't do this right now, or whatever. So the role changed, but now but now she wants to come back. Like, she's like, oh, can you... I mean, actually, I'm not going to say a specific message, but she expressed interest in coming back, and I keep offering her other roles in terms of, like, you know, Genevra, Mrs. Dysart, so that she can stay in the series. But yeah, it just doesn't work out that way. Because I guess what she really wants to do is the thing that she met me for in the first place. Which makes sense, but I don't know, why Agatha in particular? Like, I'm not sure. Like, I asked her, but she didn't really tell me. But yeah, it's not just her. She was the first, arguably the first case of somebody realizing that they didn't know what they signed up for. Because, like, obviously the people that I tended to discuss the Music Girl back then with were the ones who it started off with, the ones that I was, like, talking to before on Discord, and gradually the other voice actors kind of either like as soon as, like, I stopped doing hands-on direction, some of them have been sidelined. Like Nova, for example, never really got to meet the rest of the cast that much because, you know, she came in after the time I stopped doing hands-on directing. And of course, like I said, didn't know what she signed up for. Like, I've already talked about how I need to be transparent. Like last week I said I need to be more transparent about how long the Music Girl is going to go on for, in some way that's not just Walking Wednesday, so that the people basically know. Maybe like an integration video or something. I'll stick that on the server maybe. But yeah, I need people to know that, you know, I need people to know that if they're not going to be able to commit to this kind of thing, then be prepared for the need to either send stuff in early or and then have another break until you're next needed or get replaced. Like, it's sobering, but it's another thing about not clinging onto the past. Because, like, it's not healthy for me, it's not healthy for them. It's just not a good, viable method for making a series. And I've learned that now. I'm going to run out of time soon. It's going to be an abrupt ending. I apologise, but please leave a like or dislike, your opinion matters. And so I've not done so already. And on that note, until next time, farewell. There's a stream today. That was a car. Fantastic. Goodbye.